Okay, episode 22 of New York City Bike Culture. I'm here with Shannon at Chainring Queen on Instagram. She is a local bike rider, advocate also, ambassador from Queens. Currently living in Queens, originally from California. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Represent with the hat. We're sitting today, though, exciting. The weather's finally warming up, and we're sitting like somewhat warm if the wind doesn't pick up in Prospect Park. So that's super exciting. Good meeting point, kind of halfway. Well, more halfway for me than for you, but we'll take it. We both rode here. We did a little half lap, and now we're sitting here. And we'll talk a little bit more about Shannon's work in the bike community and the advocacy community, and just riding, leading rides, and a little bit about that. So I always start. Tell us a little bit more about you as a cyclist, how you got into it, the story of when you first got on the bike to where you are now. What's that?
Sure. I was fortunate. I grew up in California. Learned to ride, through the neighborhoods, suburban riding primarily growing up. My dad would bring my sister and I on neighborhood rides, to the local park. And then, I kind of didn't bike for a while. I was really involved in the high school in collegiate sports. Played field hockey and lacrosse at the collegiate level. Went on to win a couple national championships in those sports.
That's pretty good.
And then it wasn't until I moved to New York City for grad school that I, went from, California, it's a very cultural area, to suddenly living in a big city where it was just easier to get around on, by public transport, walking, and cycling. I bought my first really a commuter. It was a step through hybrid bike that I was in grad school. I think I remember I got a tax refund. I was really excited because I could spend $300, $400 on a bike. At the time, I thought that was big deal.
Oh, so you got a tax refund and that you spent on the bicycle.
I was paying my way through grad school. So
I got excited. There was a tax incentive program for bicycle in this country. No,
we're still working on that.
They had
sadly.
a great one in the UK from what I've read, but yeah, it's not here yet. That'll come. Okay.
No, but anyway, and I would, I actually used it more for transport. Getting groceries. I was tired of hauling my groceries. I wanted to explore more of the city. New York City, you have to walk everywhere. Things are spread out. I lived in Queens. So I just started biking places.
Yeah.
Not really, being, very aware of this New York cycling scene or culture.
Yeah.
And it just grew from there. I started biking and signing up for different rides. The Transalt rides, 5 borough rides, the local community rides. Found out about We Bike New York City, which is a wonderful organization about empowering women through bicycles. Did my first, group, just sort of coffee shop rides with them, to fun little, very social rides, and was exposed to hey, there's more to New York City cycling than just pedaling around on my own.
Yeah.
And I rode, I affectionately now call my clunker bike, all the way to Montauk and did a century on it.
Oh, wow,
I actually just recently donated it to a cycling friend who gave it to her granddaughter for Christmas. So I was happy that it got passed on to a good person.
But you rode that first all the way to Montauk then?
Yeah, I rode that probably 7 or 8 years.
It was. I like that.
And then I found out about New York Cycle Club's Stig program and Women's Cycling New York City. And that's where I got my first used road bike off of one of the We Bike leaders. She was moving back to the Midwest, and how we happen to be the same height.
Perfect.
And, I did New York Cycle Club's C-Sig on that. And went back to co-lead a SIG, and then did a B-SIG, and as I progressed with my cycling, I got nicer bikes and started basically the point where I was riding almost every weekend.
Awesome. And that's what you just did. You said you rode a couple of days this past weekend, the first really pretty nice weekend in New York City. Finally, we're all out back on the bikes. Let me pick up on that real quick before I forget it. I think this came up in my very first conversation with Lucia Deng, who also came into cycling through NYCC. So the SIG model that they have is basically, can you explain that a little bit, to people? Because I think that term is not usually used in the bike culture for groups or anything. Right. So what are those SIGs? They're just basically groups of different ability levels or interest levels.
always get at is I think it's special interest groups is
Right.
the definition. Really what it is, it's a intro to road cycling development program, I guess is a good way to put it. It's very safety focused. We teach basic bike handling skills, sort of bike maintenance 101, how to repair a flat, how to take care of your bike, sort of what, common components that wear out and things like that, how to safely ride in a group, hand signals, communication up and down the line, how to ride in a single file, how to ride predictably, how to stay safe on New York City streets. Wow. The great thing about it is, sea level, you don't even need a road bike to, half the group, that does, half the group does it. A lot of people think that you have to be some hardcore, roadie to join. You don't. You might end up becoming one and get, love it. But, really what I love about the sea level is it's, you ride with the same group. So there's a very much for 8 to 10 weeks. So it's a great way to make new cycling friends. That's how I made up quite a few of my friends in New York City. And then once the SIGs ends, you have new people to ride with, friends that are about the same pace as you.
So this is like an ever kind of restarting model, kind of.
And as you get up,
you
move
become
up
a member,
into the
right?
SIGs. You do need to, be a member of New York Cycle Club to participate in the SIG. It's a $30 yearly membership, which is pretty reasonable for New York City. I think it's probably one of the best values in New York City. But there's no additional fee to participate in the SIG.
Right. Okay.
So it's actually basically free training.
Free coaching.
With you get coaching. There's one usually a primary leader for the group, and then a couple co-leaders. They're there. They can even help. Gear questions. What is a good bike shops? There's a lot of technical stuff that goes on with cycling that you don't, I was new to it, you don't know what to buy, you don't, where to spend the money, or what's the safest helmet, things like that. So
there's so much knowledge required, so you have some knowledgeable folks to pass some of that on and help you. That makes a lot of difference. So $30, that's a good value. I would say so. So you're still help with that? You still do that right now, or are you still involved with NYCC?
Very much so. I just yesterday helped. We have an influx due to the bike boom occurring, related to the pandemic. That there's a lot of newness in cyclists in New York City. So the club, we actually have an influx of sea level riders. So I actually got an email recently. Hey, can you come back and help? Co-lead some sea rides. So yesterday we did a wonderful ride. We started 60th and right over by the Queensboro Bridge in Manhattan over the, Queensboro through Astoria, Jackson Heights, made our way.
Oh, so you went into Queens?
Deep Queens, through Forest Hills Park, all the way into Bushwick, and we checked out some of the murals there. We had some great pizza, and made our way back through Brooklyn. So the sea rides are usually 30-ish miles. We try to keep them relatively, flat, no major climbing. And you
get some natural breaks with the lights
and
all that.
We do take more frequent breaks. Once you go, into B level, you'll get about 30,000 feet of climbing. Or sorry, 3,000. 30,000 feet,
That's a lot of...
Sorry, got my zeros there.
That's like 3.5 times Mount Everest,
I can't claim to have done 30,000 feet. The 3,000 feet of climbing, you'll get 40 to probably 60 miles up to a century if you're doing the SIG with B-SIG, and that's like B-SIG starts at 16 to 18 miles per hour. So
so roughly
you can find a group that matches your pace and even sort of your personal goals, but also sort of what you want out of it. Some people want it to be casual and social, other people want it to be more endurance training. So, we get some triathlons, sometimes a lot of runners that convert and want to become cyclists or learn about cycling.
And they immediately kind of go, this is a sport, and there's other people, this is more socializing and a fun way to get around.
I think that's what's great about the club is it caters to everyone. They even have all the way up to a race team, if that's something that interests you as well. That's
really great. My impression is they're a little bit more like northern Manhattan Bronx space. Is that wrong, or do I just find that, or are you really all over the city?
I don't have exact stats. A lot of the rides do traditionally start Riverside Drive because that's easy access. Out over the GW, we do a lot of rides, up into Nyack and over the GW. I will say that this year the club, again with the influx of new riders, we are doing a whole new I want to call it Discover Your City. I believe the technical name is Explore Your City ride series, where we are focusing more on actual, similar to the ride I described yesterday, where it's more learning routes within New York City, where before the club was, a lot of rides were actually outside the city. For safety reasons, it is actually easier to ride outside the city if you're doing long road rides. And the club does like to get people, to explore outside the city as well.
Yeah.
Into New Jersey, Connecticut. Obviously with COVID restrictions, that's been all,
right.
A little challenged in the past year. But, we even do weekend trips to the Berkshires and things like that.
Yeah. Now you mentioned numbers seem to be increasing. That's what we all like to hear, right? In many ways. So you've already noticed that, or the club's been noticing that, and that's why they've been putting on more rides. Or I know you're not the person who has all the numbers right now, probably, but you feel like that's the general impression that you're getting, that the membership looks to be up, or a lot know
that,
rides.
I don't have exact. I know NYCC recently sent out a survey, so it would be interesting to see, explore the exact stats. I don't have access to that data, but. I do also help manage, I'm a ride leader for Women's Cycling New York City, and we have a Facebook group forum. And throughout the pandemic, we are getting literally like 3 to 5 requests a day. I help administer the group, so I want to approve people into it. We have over, I think it was 2,500. I think we've hit 2,700 female identifying, cyclists.
Right. Now, what group again?
Women's Cycling New York City. We're
City.
supported with by Bicycle Habitat. They're great to us. They help support our program. And not only that, but the Female Bike Forum by We Bike is also, I've noticed their numbers have been clicking up really high. Yeah. So, it's fantastic to see. I'm a big proponent of getting more women on bikes, so that, for me, that's really exciting to see.
Yeah. So I think you can tell Shannon's got a lot of involvement in a lot of different groups already. NYCC, We Bike, right, and Women's Cycling NYC, which is, as you mentioned, supported, promoted by Bicycle Habitat, one of the local, as you can see on your jersey, one of the local bike shops, mostly exclusively Brooklyn based. I'm trying to. No, they have a location in Manhattan too. At least right?
They now. The original shop was in Soho, sadly closed about 2 years ago. They now have a shop in Chelsea, right off Vanderbilt here by Prospect Park, and a Park Slope location, not too far from here as well.
Yeah, I know both of the Brooklyn ones pretty well. So good, yeah. And I would love to have someone from that group too at some point later on again. So I know you're representing, so maybe you can help me out with the connection there. The more the women on cycling, or like you said, female identifying, I don't want to get too much into the gender question. Whatever gender, you should be on a bike, and I think we need more representation, or whatever you identify as. And I think that's the key too. I think there's been a lot of push for that last year, I think. Do you feel then, with the numbers that you've just mentioned, do you feel like that there is kind of an exponential change in that, or in non-male kind of cyclists, or do you feel like the numbers are not all that different from what they've been in the past? Do you feel like you've seen a change over the last years with that, more women or not, or female identifying, or not?
From just our the numbers I'm seeing, the number of questions I get, and I am becoming a sort of a face for women's cycling in New York City, and it's exciting to see. That hearing from the bike shop. I think every single bike shop across the nation sold out of bikes right now. But we're in some sort of unprecedented times where we have this huge bike boom happening. It's not just New York City; it's across. It's quite frankly, I think it's across the world. You barely can find a bike or components right now.
Yeah.
I just this week have gotten asked to ride leads for NYCC, for Bike New York. Every people are, maybe it's nice weather finally as well, but there seems to be a huge demand for needing ride leaders and marshals for an influx of new riders. So someone who I'm also involved in the advocacy side through Transfer Choice and Alternatives. For me, that's exciting to see as well. I think that gets into infrastructure and more access to safe cycling in the city as well.
Yeah, we want to keep the advocacy part maybe for a little bit later in the conversation, but that's definitely also transportation alternatives. We'll get into that for sure. So you're involved in a lot, which is great, and I think what you just said, there's a need or demand for the more experience of us kind of step up and help educate a little bit the influx of new riders, and I think that's definitely an important point to make. So, and I know there's so many little more informal groups that have sprung up or have gotten bigger. It's like Nightcap, which is another one for everybody, like non-cisgender male, everybody who's not that kind of, and there's so many little groups in Brooklyn that I think here's another women's group, here's more another more special interest, but very casual groups. So a lot of these casual groups have sprung up, and that's great to see. I think there's a lot happening there, and people seem to be enjoying their time
Definitely.
on the bikes.
Yeah, I know.
And it's not even the weather hasn't even been good yet. So
there's a new Queens. I think it's called Queens Social Cycling. They meet at the Unisphere, and like I think it's 9 a.m. Sundays.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
You know, there's another. I think I don't know if it's Bike Girls in New York City. There's another one that I think they actually meet right here in Prospect Park. I'm actually curious to maybe try one of their rides, but they've all just literally sprung up in the past year. So
yeah, and most of these,
like sort of informal groups springing up.
Right, and most of these are, I think, the focus on social, right? And like you said, with NYCC, you have the option of going into, if you want to do it more, if you will, as a sport or competitively or endurance, whatever you go, that there's more ways to go there, but I think those social groups are a great way to just kind of figure out, do I like this? What's fun about it? And just meeting people. So I think they're very, very important too for getting people invested in bike riding. I think
definitely,
and more than just commuting, right?
Yeah, there's camaraderie to it. Again, like just people you feel comfortable asking questions to. I mean, cycling, the whole industry, traditionally is very male-dominated sport. Some people aren't comfortable, like asking, if it's a maintenance question or even a gear question or, again, there's a lot of sort of technical stuff along, with cycling that, I think if you do have, female-specific groups, that people are more, we're there to support each other, to help each other out, to, answer maybe some of those uncomfortable questions that come along with, once you start writing more, things happen. So, I think, and again, just the camaraderie, riding a group, you're more visible on the road. There's a safety aspect to it too. I think that women are more comfortable with if you know, in a group scene.
And I think we really have to not underestimate that. And I think that's for any beginner, whatever, like I said, gender, I think doesn't play a role too much there. I think when you're in New York City on the road and there's big trucks and like tiny bike lanes, I think, like you said, I think in a group you feel safer and you feel like other people around you know what they're doing and you have more visibility, right? And I think that's a big step up from being one person in a bike lane. That's more easily, overlooked. And again, I don't want to blame the cyclists for being in the bike lane and all of a sudden, like, cars hitting them. That's obviously a huge problem here. But I think bike riding can be quite safe in the city, but in the bigger groups, it is especially a great entry point to have that. And if you don't always want to ride around the park, we hope we keep seeing bikes going by here, which is great. But I think that's a really important point too. Was that, you mentioned, I want to go back to you again for a minute here. So you mentioned when you got back into it, I'm assuming when you started in California, I'm imagining the classic California, like suburban cul-de-sac, and you're riding your bike around there as a kid, and that's pretty protected, right? And maybe that wasn't your situation, but I think that's a different riding environment, obviously, than as an adult in the city, going to the grocery store or something like that, and then figuring out how can I do that comfortably and safely and in a way where I feel like this is both enjoyable and maybe also, like you said, more efficient in terms of getting around, right? Yeah. Was it a big step for you, or did you feel comfortable having played field hockey lacrosse where physical contact is a thing and maybe...
Yeah, I think that definitely helped,
I think you said before you were a goalie in lacrosse, I feel like that sounds super intimidating, where you just have from what I understand, a pretty hard ball getting like thrown at you at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, you gotta be a little crazy to be a lacrosse goalie, but and a New York City cyclist, it goes hand in hand. But I think maybe fortunate. I grew up with sports, so it was a transition for me. It wasn't quite, I think, as steep as a transition as maybe someone who wasn't involved in sports, growing up, or who's just never, didn't grow up with cycling. There's a lot of people who, maybe they didn't grow up in suburban environment, or they don't have, maybe they didn't have access to bikes, growing up. So there's a lot of different circumstances involved, of what makes someone, feel safe on the road or not. I will say, even today, I've been riding, road cycling now for 5 years, and even, to just riding over the park today, there's, I think I count 7 trucks in the bike lane from Queens to Prospect Park. It's still mentally, you have to sometimes be in the right mindset. And I feel why I got involved in the advocacy side is because I don't feel like it should be this huge stressful experience for somebody, to get somewhere where they need it. A lot of people use cycling as a means of, transport of,
Right.
to get to the job, to get to work, to go to the grocery store, what have you, and run an errand in your local neighborhood. It shouldn't be this huge stressful experience. It shouldn't take that. You shouldn't have to be a former national champion lacrosse goalie, to feel safe. We want to lower the entry.
And you don't have to be, right?
To make it more accessible.
Right.
I definitely think, having very quick reflexes helps in New York City. It's probably, knock on wood, it's kept me alive. But it shouldn't have to be that way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And again, we're going to get to advocacy later. You are working actively on it not having to be that way.
Yeah.
But I think those experiences then, do they make you feel competitive on the bike too? Because you just mentioned you went to, this was both in lacrosse or in field hockey, the national championships, or again, you competed in them either way. These
runner-up in field hockey, two-time national champion lacrosse.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Yeah,
depends on whatever you want to count it.
Yeah, that's still very impressive. And then did cycling ever bring out that competitive side then, or was that you were happy that part of your life was kind of, because a lot of people I think get into, I'm a little bit more familiar with the racing side. We get a lot of those former collegiate athletes who are like, where do I go with all my energy now? Or they realize after a few years of like maybe, really focusing on their job, and then they get into maybe the 30s, let's just say, it could be later, it could be earlier, and they realize something's missing, and they want an outlet or something, or they get into it and they really go for it hard. It sounds like for you it was much more of a more organic kind of going back into the cycling thing and discovering little things, and I'm actually glad to see how organically and quickly, and it sounds like fairly smoothly it was for you, that process of connecting to different places and with different people as somebody who didn't know where to start.
A similar scenario. I came to New York, went to grad school, worked pretty stressful, corporate jobs for 10 plus, almost 15 years now, and I played on a post-collegiate women's lacrosse team in the city for about 5 years when I first moved here, and it was a great way to meet. Still some of my longest New York City friends are from that team. I guess just growing up, playing sports, I've always loved that team camaraderie of, and having that outlet. And, I was fortunate to, finish grad school and grow my career, but I was very, I kind of stopped having a fun activity for a while. It's in New York, it's fast paced, and, it kind of hit me of like, what am I doing for myself anymore, and that's when I think I was learned about women's cycling in New York City and started doing some rides with them, and growing those, having a, group where they're cheering each other on, checking in, kind of, helping you train, learn the ropes. And I think that's where I really, I owe a lot to that group and some of the former leaders who really took me under their wing. And right here in Prospect Park, is where I learned how to reach for a water bottle, for the first time on my bike. How to, bike handling skills, to safely get over the GW bridge, how to, practicing tight turns and things like that. And having that sort of safe environment to learn, because I didn't know what I was doing. I got a used road bike, and I was really excited. I was going to become a cyclist. I do have that, that athletic drive of, if I decide to do something, I usually take it. I will say, I've been told, I don't race. I always kind of like to put that out there. I've been, I have the power. I'm a strong athlete. But I think since I did spend so many years sort of operating at that super high level, I wanted just more the camaraderie and the fun. For me now, it's more about getting out on the weekend, getting out in nature, exploring new places, discovering. I don't own a car. I haven't owned a car in 15 years in New York City. So, when I want to, go see trees and nature, and growing up in California with having beach and access to beach and ocean, I do like to. For me, it's about getting outside, exploring new places, and more like the adventure, and even meeting new people that maybe you wouldn't interact with in normal corporate environment. So that's where I get my joy. And now I get a lot of joy of sort of helping pass on that knowledge that people were, took the time to give me to get me to where I am. So yeah, I think that's an important aspect of it as well. So,
Absolutely.
you know, giving back to the cycling community.
I think
It gave so much to me when I was just an excited newbie, you know, not knowing what I was doing.
100%.
Yeah.
I think that's what we all, like I said, those of us who have been in it for a while should be aspiring to in some way. There's lots of ways of doing that, right? Like whether leading a ride or just being active on Instagram or promoting things, promoting positivity even there. So, or just promoting skills or figuring out things out for new people and helping them figure things out. So I think that's super important. So you mentioned NYCC, those other groups, are they mostly, well, you should join our Facebook group or Instagram or whatever group, whatever social media group, and that's how we communicate. And then those are, other than that, really completely open, any level, and join, take a look, and if you like it, show up to the rides. If you don't like the ride, that's fine. And then there's no membership fee attached, so the hurdle to entry is pretty low.
Well, for Women Cycling New York City, we are road cycling focused. So they're, you know, when I get a new rider, you know, you always try to gauge someone's goals or interests, you know. Again, WeBike's where I started. You know, if they're looking for a very social group, I would recommend starting there. If you know, you want to be a little more serious about it, quote unquote, we still, you know, we're not super serious. We like to have fun, but you know, but if you want to, you know, learn how to ride clipless, you want to learn how to pace line, you want to.
I think that's more serious. You can call it that,
it's a little more advanced skill set, I guess, would be the right way to describe it. But even within Women Cycling New York City, we, similar to the Stig, we have, we call it beginner, intermediate, advanced. We don't use ABC, but it's very similar to the NYCC structure, where we do laps, Prospect Park and Central Park, traditionally, you know, early morning. And we are teaching road cycling skills. So it is definitely a different atmosphere than maybe, you know, it is for someone who's looking to be, you know, a little more, you know, some people, actually, I don't know how many people we have that. We have a few who race on different teams, but it's, you know, we're kind of a lot of people also participate in NYCC that are part of Women Cycling. So there's some, you know, overlap. But we did I guess it's a year and a half, 2 years ago now. Sorry, the last year's been a little bit of a blur, so my timing's a little, I guess back 2019, you know, a lot of people, you know, some of the people never had gotten over the, Women Cycling gals had never been over the GW Bridge, so we did the market ride, you know. For some people, that's a huge, you know, that's a big ride for some people, you know. There's hills involved, there's, you know, you're riding, you know, some dodgy traffic and, you know, narrow lanes and, you know, so some people have never actually been out of the city, so we like to expose them. We also do a really fun ride to the Rockaways, a beach, you know, right out there, spend the day at the beach, take the ferry back. One of my favorite rides to lead, you know, it's a great summer ride. So we were we were getting more requests for, it traditionally started as more laps and training. We were getting more requests to do actual rides, so we were slowly progressing on that, and we're hoping to bring it back. I don't want to claim any timing. I'm a ride leader for that group, but I'm not the director. But we are, you know, chatting about when to start things back up.
Right, and that's what group again? Sorry.
Women's Cycling.
Women's Cycling New York City. Yeah. So there's plenty of options, I think, for everybody. There's something out there. You just got to dig a little bit. I think these days, Instagram, if you look around, you can find something. And then there's maybe a little bit of a central page missing where everybody's listed, but it's there's lots out there. And I think that's great too. And I think if you even just riding through Prospect Park, you can sometimes meet people who are in a group, or you see a group, just chat with them. I think most of them are very open to people joining, so that's great. So with that too, and I think we haven't talked about that yet. If you want to talk about your specialized ambassador too, is that?
Yes.
So yet another way in which you're connected a different way.
Yeah. So now going into year 2 of being the brand ambassador for Specialized.
I'm pretty sure everybody knows who Specialized is.
If anyone wants to get a look at my bike, and I can see it.
It's a very nice bike. I really like the paint job too, I have to say. Electronic shifting.
It's a sort of opportunity that fell on me. I walked into Bicycle Habitat. I'm in there quite often. As a larger rider, I tend to break bike components, so I got to know the shop and the mechanics there pretty well. There's a reason my Instagram account is Chainring Queen. I've broken 3 chain rings.
Wow.
So I can't even do 3. Yeah. So I tend to bend them somehow. I'm not sure how, but anyway. And, you know, they're like, hey, do you want to be a brand ambassador, Specialized? And I laughed because I thought, you know, there's a lot of really talented cyclists in New York City. I know. I mean, I have friends who race. And I'm like, yeah, I don't race. They're never going to, you know, they're not going to pick me. Like, haha, that's, you know, sweet of you guys. But, you know, there's, you know, more qualified cyclists out there in New York City, you know, in a way. But I think, you know, to my own surprise, they were really looking for people who were being active in their community to spread.
Also qualified,
spread,
but
know,
not in the I can go fast on the bike.
You know,
way.
when I think of it, I guess it's that athletic mind of mine of like, you know, how many, you know, things have you, you know, what's up, you know, have you achieved the highest level in the sport?
Of course.
You know, and you know, I will say I do devote a lot of time, you know, it's almost become a part-time job, you know, very unpaid and free, but, you know, I do it because I love cycling. And so many people were good to me when I got started, you know. But yeah, it's a great opportunity with Specialized. I've been able to meet fellow ambassadors across the U.S., which has been really fun.
Okay. Like you've met them in person? I mean, again, like, I don't always need to put the COVID disclaimer, but under certain circumstances, or is it more of an online connection that you still have on a time?
Because, you know, we've been talking, there's a few fellow ambassadors, one upstate, we've been trying to meet up, but it's been a little tricky with everything going on. But you know, occasionally we'll get gear to review, so, you know, there are a few perks that come along, and we get, you know, I can't disclaim what we get on our bikes, but we do get, you know, a deal on the bikes. So,
very
you know,
nice, like gravel-ish. I'm not as familiar with the line, but it's a gravel-ish
yeah, this is
bike, kind of, right?
Diverge Pro bike, Specialized. It's a new, well, not new, but it's their gravel series that become really popular, fast on the road, but also can handle gravel and unpaved New York City streets and potholes really well. That's what I found. I actually decided I actually ride this more than my road bike now because
it's the right choice for riding around the city.
You know, there's a lot of bumps and, you know, sinkholes in New York City. So
sinkhole, the filling of them, the unpredictable filling of them, where it's now all of a sudden a bump, but before it was before a hole. There's another interesting techniques.
You know, when they mill the roads and give, you know, don't notify anyone, and you know, you come off a bridge and it's suddenly future shock helps you out.
I had that experience down in Park Slope like a few weeks ago, where they decided to tear up, what is it, 5th or 6th Avenue or something like that. Good times. So we're gonna get to the advocacy bit also, but now do you feel like with all these connections, what do you describe yourself as? Like a cyclist, just a cyclist, or do you feel like you're a ride leader? Your role in the community is like you have quite a few different hats to put on.
Yeah,
you managed to do that.
Some days,
yeah.
You know?
Do you feel like you have to really? Oh, but my priority is this organization, or you can really give all of them some attention, and that's great.
I will say, you know, sometimes, you know, there are conflicts, and it, you know, can get actually a little bit overwhelming sometimes because, again, as you know, more people, you know, realize.
Because I do this, and I'm in like one club, and that's enough for me.
You know, again, with especially with the, you know, this huge growth in new cyclists, there's just such a need for experienced ride leaders and marshals to, you know, so these different organizations can put on these, you know, events and ride, you know, now that we're slowly kind of crawling back to whatever normalcy is, you know, I think people are eager to get out and, you know, socialize a bit more in a, you know, fairly safe environment, you know, with airflow and all that. So, you know, there is also a lot of overlap. So, you know, usually it ends up working out. I will say, I mean, you know, there are some weekends my next few weekends where I'm leading back-to-back Saturdays, Sundays, and, you know, physically that can take, you know, as much as I love it, you know, this is all, you know, it is all volunteer time. So, you know, sometimes I do have to, unfortunately, you know, I like to say yes as much as possible, but there's a few, you know, sometimes, you know, you still have to, you know, do laundry and things like that on your weekends. So, unfortunately, there's, you know, just life circumstances that, you know, sometimes doesn't work out. So,
I think a good volunteer needs to be able to say no too, right? Or like a good ride leader. And I think people underestimate, like, when you lead these rides, it's not just you're riding along with the group and once in a while you say, we'll turn right or left here, right? There's a lot more to it. I think mentally topic, the stress is the mental stress and depending on what kind of ride it is, the prep and like debriefing time is there's a lot that we don't think of. Like, it's not just you show up like 5 minutes before and then well, you could do it that way, and then you once in a while say yell right or left or stop or something like that, right?
No, well, that's not the rides I lead. I mean, that's actually a great topic, and I think first of all, always thank your ride leader, because as you mentioned, they're probably to prep a ride is, and this isn't even being exaggerated, is probably at least 5 to 10 hours of work. Good ride leaders will scout the route beforehand. That means they're going out on their own, putting their own safety at risk, making sure that, that there isn't suddenly a milled road, that there isn't, construction going on. I mean, so much to think of in New York City that's just unpredictable. A bridge suddenly closed off for some unforeseen reason. I mean,
or
it
there's
happens.
like a parade.
There's a parade going on.
The number of times I've gotten stuck in parades, all of a sudden you can't cross.
It's a big city. There's lots to consider. Knowing that technology has actually been, for in the NYCC, most of us use Ride with GPS to do the route planning. I don't know if people are, I use a Wahoo on the Bolt, but knowing how to sync it to, all the devices, then having to auto-generate a cue sheet. There's a technology actually kind of learning. I mean, I'm still figuring it out some days.
It's super hard. Like I most of the time I say, there's a map. I know roughly how to use it, but I don't want to touch this. Too many things that I have to think about if I have to get into that now. Sending out the email communications of, the coordinating of, the meeting spots, the locations. I always like to, remind people, your pre-ride safety check, pump your tires, so the ride will actually go smoothly. So you're not spending half your day, changing flats. Ride leaders aren't mechanics. We will help you, but that's another thing. Some people, if you're the new cyclist, they come out and they think, can you fix this and that? No, you should come out with your ride, tires pumped, water bottles filled, decent riding condition.
Decent riding. You don't have to have a new, brand new bike by any means, but a good functional bike in good working, safe order. So there is a lot of prep in, talking, getting communication with, your fellow ride leader. Who's going to lead, who's going to sweep.
So most of the time, the rides you do, you have one person in the front, one person in the back, kind of?
For NYCC, they require a minimum 2 leaders to even host a ride. That's someone leading from the front, someone sweeping for the back. People might not realize, the front, while you say mentally, is the most taxing position, because you do need to know every single turn and how to start up from a stoplight so the whole group can get through. There's certain intricacies that make a ride go smoothly, that if it's a good ride, none of the riders on the ride should even notice that these things are happening, but knowing dangerous intersections, how to get a group through the intersection safely, there is a lot of sort of prep that goes into that. And then the sweep is actually the most dangerous position, I think, because a lot of accidents happen from behind. So, you're literally protecting the group. So, I think a lot of people are like, oh yeah, you're the sweep today, but it's actually a critical condition to keep the groups from a safety standpoint. So, and when cycling New York City, we usually actually have, I think, three riders. We do have NYCC capsule rides, so. We're one cycling last summer, for the beach rides, we were getting some pretty large groups. Sure
we talk. I was going to ask that too with NYCC. So 2 people is good for 20? We're talking.
I think we actually split it into beginner, medium, intermediate, advanced groups. I think we had a total 40 or 50, between the 3 groups. You're getting groups of 15. I think NYCC right now they're capped at 8 due to COVID restrictions, but usually for Stig it's 12 to 15, it's 12 riders plus 3 leaders. We actually usually keep 1 in the middle as well, just to have good communication up and down the line.
That's ideal.
So again, the Stig is very instructional based. So we are looking at people's cadence and pedal stroke and giving tips along through these rides.
So you do that during the ride too.
Not very first ride, but each ride there's we'll stop and do a skill section, and focus on different skill. So it is educational focused, I guess. We do also we do some big rides as well, but Yeah, sorry.
No, this is great. This is great. You can see the mind of a ride leader.
Anyway, yeah, we were talking ride leaders. There's there's a lot of advanced planning that goes into it, and again, it's
like Shannon said,
Yeah.
I think thank you, ride leader. If you go on these rides, be thankful, even though sometimes they feel like they're policing you or like corralling you like in a kindergarten. I think it's super important, and they do so much good work in these rides, and like I said, a lot of responsibility rests on them too, because something happens, or God forbid, or if a rider who's maybe new, or like underestimated their physical abilities, or they have a problem with the bike, then somebody's gonna stay with them probably, or there's lots of things that can go wrong.
I'm big believer in don't leave anyone behind.
Right.
I mean, different clubs have different philosophies on that. But for C and B level rides, NYCC, why we do have 3 leaders, typically right now it's 2, but is because if someone has a major mechanical, we're not going to leave you, if you're out in New Jersey, we're not going to leave you stranded alone on the side of the road.
Right.
That's not the nature. I think once you get to A level, they're more like, you should know how to fix your own stuff. But,
yeah, right. That's the model, right?
when cycling you say we will at least, get you to the safest, the nearest subway spot, or, Metro North or whatnot. We'll send you on your way safely. We might not ride back to the city with you, but we'll make sure that, you can, get home, we'll check in with you and make sure that you get home safely. But, and this may be on the conversation, but there are significant liabilities, in New York City, from, a club and insurance perspective. I think a lot of people don't, notice as well that
we know that all from the bike racing community too, that
but,
a big issue for the permit is always the money and insurance question, right? And like the state, like you said, the liability question often, right? And so is there a waiver that people sign then? And this is how that works, right?
That's why I know when cycling in New York City, we require, even just to participate in training laps, things do happen. NYCC, I know they have like a supplemental, that's part of the $30
because
you're
you become a
paying
member,
for,
right?
Is your membership. There's just like a supplemental, I don't know the exact
It's
terminology, but
thing.
I actually have asked about it in the past. So I know they cover insurance. And the great thing about riding with a club is that if anything happens, we have, some of the top New York City bike attorneys as part of the club. There's a lot of actual doctors that have been, help lead certain seminars and things. So there are, something already happened. I think that's what's great about being involved in New York City cycling community is there will, God forbid anything, severe happens, there are people who will be there to, help you. So, that's not the not so like happy side of cycling, but it's the reality of cycling in a big city where
it is,
things
and
happen.
I think you have to be, like you said, it's the responsibility of the organization and to a lesser extent the ride leader to help with that and to think about these things. And then because again, 99% of the time you find the 1% something might happen, more or less than 1%.
And, I have been asked to lead rides that are less formally organized, and those are the ones I do have to turn down. And that is the reason. It's from as a ride leader, there's a lot of personal just liability that, I want people to, be safe, but there's also real financial something, happened on a ride that I think a lot of people, some of these, I don't want to take away from, the efforts people are to bring, these grassroots organizations, but I think it's something that I would encourage them to look into, because not until it happens will that, I've had to turn down some requests due to that. So
that makes sense, and I think it's
oftentimes they're like, oh, thanks for letting, it's just an awareness, lack of an awareness topic that doesn't often gets overlooked. And
I think the organizations you're working with there, the groups that obviously have a certain level of quality established, that is, once you're used to that, it's kind of hard to say I don't know the group here and it's new, and like it's a little tricky to say that. That makes a lot of sense. Let's maybe end the first half of the conversation here with more positive stuff. So what are some of the positive memories of you said 10-15 years of riding the city? What are some of the good moments? Is it when you get out into, I think this past weekend you said you were up in Westchester County and on the all the different trails called up there, the North County Trail, South County Trail, North County Trail. What are some of the good memories? What are some of the favorite moments or favorite routes or favorite destinations?
For me, it's like any day, sunny, beautiful day on a bike is a good day for me. But, you know, I've had a lot of fabulous, you know, bike adventures inside and outside of the city. I mean, through different organizations, you know, I've been able to bike from Miami to Key West. That was 175 miles over 3 days. We had a great time. Yeah. I've, you know, biked through the Arcadia National Park and the carriage trails there.
Okay.
I mean, I'm fortunate to have family in California.
Those are on-road, off-road, or the Arcadia?
The Arcadia it's actually, this would be the good bike for it. It's just very gravel. I didn't have to, I had a trying to do gravel. It's but they're old carriage roads that go through the national, you know, through the it's the carriage road trails. It's beautiful, gorgeous. One of the
I didn't know about that. Okay.
It's a drive to get there, but once you do, it's worth it. It's beautiful. You know, just this past weekend, I went, you know, you can start in Van Cortlandt Park. Now with the Empire State Trail, this is, it's the Putman Trail connected to the South County to the North County.
So it keeps going north, kind of.
I mean, I did 54 miles of it on Saturday, but you can now go 750 miles. One route goes to Buffalo, the other one to Canada. On, I think it's mostly, you know, trail or protected. You know, I was surprised to see the improvements. It used to be like super bumpy, and there's now signage. There's actually bike fix stations, porta potties, tables. I mean, I was mile markers. I mean, I was like, I'm ready to plan a summer adventure and, you know, tackle a good few hundred miles of that. So it's called the Empire State Trail. It's a system where they've I think they've said, is it almost finished now, that it's one more or less, they're all different chunks of different trails kind of, but they're all interconnected, right? And they, like you said, you can go all the way from New York City to Buffalo or to the Canadian border, just kind of going straight north. And I think both it goes through Albany and then it splits up there or something. Exactly. Yeah, there's kind of branches that I think it's around Albany where it branches to 2 different directions. But
a lot on gravel, I think. But like the gravel, you could probably ride on road bikes still. Like and here down here, like you said, sounds like they've made a lot of infrastructure improvements already and smoothed out some of the concrete.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised just from, I think I last rode it probably last summer. So, you know, in the past 6 months, there's been some significant, improvements. Yeah.
So check that out. I think it's a long way to Buffalo. But you can do it with a few nights of sleep in between. You know,
everyone wants to be my
have to do it one day.
my SAG support. You know, let me know.
It sounds like a great time to do that, actually. Yeah, I've been thinking about that too, but it does require some planning, which you're used to. So so maybe that's in your future. Let's take a little bit of break, dream of Buffalo or the Canadian border, and the coming summer, that hopefully brings great things. And then we'll talk a little bit more advocacy and a few other topics and bike infrastructure and all that.